Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashto Tapasata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotara Shata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samaveta Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto number 5, Chapter 13, Text number 8. Chalan, Kvachit, Kantaka, Sharkarangrir, Nagarurukshur, Vimana, Ivaste, Pade Pade, Bhyantara, Vahinardita, Vahninardita, Kautumbika, Krudhyati, Vai, Janaya, Chalan Kvachit Kantaka Sharkarangrir, Nagarurukshur Vimanai Vaste, Pade Pade Bhyantara Vahninardita, Kautumbika Krudhyati, Kautumbika Krudhyati Vajanaya, Chalan Kvachit Kantaka Sharkarangrir, Nagarurukshur Vimanai Vaste, Pade Pade Bhyantara Vahninardita, Kautumbika Krudhyati Vajanaya, Chalan Kvachit Kantaka Sharkarangrir, Nagarurukshur Vimanai Vaste, Pade Pade Bhyantara Vahninardita, Kautumbika Krudhyati Vajanaya, Chalan Kvachit Kantaka Sharkarangrir, Nagarurukshur Vimanai Vaste, Pade pade bhyantaravah ninardita. Kautumbika krudhyati vaijanaya. Prakash. Pade pade bhyantaravah ninardita. Kautumbika krudhyati vaijanaya. Anybody else locally? Anybody on Zoom?
Chalan kvachit kantakakasharangri.
Chalan kvachit kandakasharkarangrir.
Nagara rukshu vimana ivaste.
Nagara rukshur vimanai vaste.
Pade pade bhyantaravarhinarditaha.
Pade pade bhyantaravah ninarditaha.
Kautumbikaha kudyati vaijanaya.
Kautumbika krudhyati vaijanaya. Chalan, wandering. Kvachit, sometimes. Kandaka sharkara, pierced by thorns and small stones. Angrihi, whose feet. Naga, the hills. Arurukshu, one desiring to climb. Vimana, disappointed. Iva, like. Aste, becomes. Pade pade, step by step. Abhyantara, within the abdomen. Vahnina, by the strong fire of appetite. Ariditaha, being fatigued and aggrieved. Kautumbikaha, a person living with his family members. Krudhyati, becomes angry. Vai, certainly. Janaya, at the family members. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Translation: sometimes the merchant in the forest wants to climb the hills and mountains, but due to insufficient footwear, his feet are pricked by small stone fragments and by thorns on the mountain. Being pricked by them, he becomes very aggrieved. Sometimes a person who is very attached to his family becomes overwhelmed with hunger, and due to his miserable condition, he becomes furious with his family members. Purport: the ambitious conditioned soul wants to be very happy in this material world with his family, but he is compared to a traveler in the forest who desires to climb a hill full of thorns and small stones. As stated in the previous verse, the happiness derived from society, friendship, and love is like a drop of water in the scorching heat of the desert. One may want to become very great and powerful in society, but this is like attempting to climb a hill full of thorns. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur compares one's family to high mountains. Becoming happy in their association is like a hungry man's endeavoring to climb a mountain full of thorns. Almost 99.9% of the population is unhappy in family life, despite all the attempts being made to satisfy the family members. In the Western countries, due to dissatisfaction of the family members, there is actually no family life. There are many cases of divorce, and out of dissatisfaction, the children leave the protection of their parents. Especially in this age of Kali, family life is being reduced. Everyone is becoming self-centered because that is the law of nature. Even if one has sufficient money to maintain a family, the situation is such that no one is happy in family life. Consequently, according to the Varnashram institution, one has to retire from family life in middle age. Panchashortham vanam vrajet, One should voluntarily retire from family life at age 50 and go to Vrindavan or a forest. This is recommended by Srila Prahlad Maharaj. Tat sadhu manne suravarya dehi nam sada samudvigna dhiyama sadgrahat hitvatma patam grihamanda kupam vanam gato yadharim ashrayeta. There is no benefit in transferring from one forest to another. One must go to the Vrindavan forest and take shelter of Govinda. That will make one happy. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness is therefore constructing a Krishna Balaram temple to invite its members as well as outsiders to come and live peacefully in a spiritual atmosphere. That will help one become elevated to the transcendental world and return home back to Godhead. Another sentence in this verse is very significant. Kautumbika krudyati vaijanaya. When one's mind is disturbed in so many ways, he satisfies himself by becoming angry with his poor wife and children. The wife and children are naturally dependent on the father, but the father, being unable to maintain the family properly, becomes mentally distressed and therefore chastises the family members unnecessarily. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, Achinnadhara drabana yasyanti girikananam. Being disgusted with family life, one separates from the family by divorce or some other means. If one has to separate, why not separate willingly? Systematic separation is better than forced separation. Forced separation cannot make anyone happy, but by mutual consent or by the Vedic arrangement, one must separate from his family members at a certain age and fully depend on Krishna. This makes one's life successful. Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupagadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utaf Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragana Tanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Anvitangscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So people in this material world, the conditioned souls within this material world, like it says in the first sentence of this purport, they're very ambitious. Everybody is very ambitious to find happiness in this material world, to make material progress. And nowadays in our society, in the age of information, in the modern age, we hear so much about progress, scientific progress. We're trying to cure this disease. We're trying to cure that disease. We're trying to go back to the moon as if we ever went in the first place. We're trying to go to Mars and settle there. Anyway, so many bogus things going on in the name of science. Social progress, we're trying to make everybody equal. Everybody's exactly the same, regardless of age, regardless of sexual orientation. If you want to be if you're born a man and you want to be a woman, so be it. If you're born a woman and you want to be a man, so be it. Everybody's equal. Political progress, we want to, or if you want to be both, if you just depending on the day, if you want to be, if you want to be a man one day and you want to be a woman the next day, then that's okay. That's great. You just keep on changing, yeah. And then political progress, people are, they want to get this leader out, and once we get this leader out, everything's going to be good. And when we get this leader in, then everything's going to be good, and go to war with this country and that country, and then everything will be good. So much talk about progress. People are trying to make progress. And factually, actually, this society has made progress, has made material progress. This society is quite materially advanced. We have So much information just in our, in our pockets, on our phones. We don't have to worry about polio. We don't have to worry about smallpox. Of course, we've got to worry about the next thing. We've got to worry about COVID, and then we got to worry about whatever comes after that. But we have made some progress, We have technology and things like that. So the society is actually quite materially advanced. And this is as a result of people being addicted to sex life. Actually, this material advancement is fueled by the mode of passion and the conditioned souls wanting to be happy in this material world. And this mode of passion is characterized by sex life. And Prabhupada says if one wants, in the Vedas, actually it's encouraged that if one wants material acquisition, he should be encouraged in sex life. So people are going on completely addicted to sex. And this is the driving force, this is the impetus behind material progress. Pumsastriyamatini bhavametam. This is the basic principle. Because people, they want to enjoy material life. And enjoying material life means enjoying sex life. That's the highest material pleasure. And so just like we have, when we're taking prasadam outside, we have these sparrows. You have all these sparrows that come, and they try to take the prasadam. We have to shoo them away. So there's so many of them, or at least there used to be. There used to be more. Now they've kind of gone down in number. They don't come around so much. And Prabhupada has also gave this example of sparrows. I thought it was fitting that I would bring it up. Sparrows, what do they want to do? They want to lay eggs. They want to find a mate and they want to lay eggs. But in order to do that, they first have to find a suitable place. They have to build, gather all kinds of sticks, fly here and there, gather all kinds of sticks and, little things. And they have to make a nest. And so, similarly, this in human society, it's the same principle, except we're building skyscrapers, we're building, I guess previously they used to build castles and, big, nice, mansions or, whatever. But it's the same principle, same animalistic principle. And nowadays in society, just like it was saying that quote Prabhupada gives, that in the Vedas, one should be, if one wants material acquisition, he should be encouraged in sex life. This society is very much encouraging sex life. Basically, just anything that makes you happy. You just go ahead and do it. Like the previous president of the United States, Donald Trump, he was married to a woman 25 years younger than him, And I think the previous prime minister of France was married to a woman who was 25 years older than him. Still is. Okay, still is. Same president. Okay, yeah. Married to a woman 25 years old. He was his school teacher. And then she got a divorce and they got married to each other. So, yeah, and now we have, and if you're dissatisfied with, humans, you can buy a sex robot. And they have those nowadays. You can buy one. And basically anything goes. As long as it makes you happy, absolutely anything goes. And nowadays people think that, it's due to this Darwinian idea. Sex is just a natural thing, so we should just engage with it, engage in it, and, it'll make you happy. And then also this idea, another idea that comes from Sigmund Freud, that if you repress these feelings, these sexual feelings, then you develop all kinds of neuroses. And it's very bad for your health, actually, they think, to suppress the sex desire. And so as a result of this religion, religious people, religious values, are seen as oppressive, they're seen as unhealthy, they're seen as, old-fashioned, because people have all these amazing new ideas. But actually these people, the real oppression is their senses. They're being oppressed by their senses because they're being forced to go here and there. They're being forced to talk to this person, go see this person, look at this, look at that, eat this, eat that. They're being completely oppressed by their senses as a result of this lust in their heart. And they're being completely entangled in this material world. And the example is given of a Jamil. A Jamil, he was a great Brahmana at one point. And he was out in the woods one day he was collecting wood for his guru so that his guru could perform sacrifices. And so he's out in the forest, he's looking for wood, and he happens upon a Shudra couple, and he happens upon a prostitute uniting with a low-class man. And when he sees this, although he was a great Brahmana, his mind just completely, just triggered something in his mind. He just couldn't get this woman out of his mind. Even he went back to his family, when he had a wife, went back to his wife, and he just couldn't do it. He couldn't control himself. And so he went and he looked for this woman. He was his senses were just dragging him all over. He was trying to find this woman. And eventually he did find her, and he married her. And he had, so many kids. So many kids he had, and he got entangled completely with this woman. He was having kids up until the age of, up until the age of 80 he was having kids? Is that what it said? Up until the age of 80 he was having kids. So it's stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam that relationships with the opposite sex are completely entangling. What is it? Tayor mito hridaya grantimahu. That they tie a very hard knot within the heart. Hridaya granti. And one is completely bound to material enjoyment, to sense gratification, to this material world. And so in this verse, Prabhupada is quoting a verse from Prahlad Maharaj, in which he says, Hitvatma patam, or, no, it's not that verse. What's that verse? Grihamedi sukham hitucham. Yanmai tunari grihamedi sukham hitucham. So that's Prahlad Maharaj, right? Yeah. So Prahlad Maharaj, he's bringing up this term grihamedi. And this is a type of householder. A type of householder is a grihamedi, and the other kind is a grihasta, which I'll explain later. One type of householder is a grihamedi, and practically 99.9% of the population nowadays are grihamedis, people who are in family life, but they're completely materialistic. And so this term grihamedi comes from so medhi. So griha means home, and medhi. So medhi is like when you have a bull. A bull, it's tied to a pole and it's walking around and it's threshing grains or something. That pole, to which that bull is chained, is called the medhi. So griha medhi is a materialistic householder, one who is bound to a center point and who is engaging in all kinds of work around this center point. And the center point, Prabhupada says, the center point of grihamedi life is the genitalia of the wife. This is what Prabhupada says. And so around this center point of sex life, the grihamedis, they're walking around and they're engaging in so much hard work around this one center point of sexual enjoyment. And factually speaking, materialistic household life is extremely difficult. It's extremely difficult. People, they're working. I mean, how many daylight hours do you have? I mean, maybe 16 at most. You have 16 daylight hours, and for 8 of those hours, the grihamedis are working in some cubicle, in some office, or in some factory, and they're working for, practically speaking, half of their daylight hours. So half of their life is wasted just working for sense gratification. And we see so many, people are completely burnt out from work. They kill themselves sometimes because they're so burnt out from working so hard. But still, it's being encouraged so much that just get a nice job and go to school and work really hard in school and get a nice job and just work, and that's the purpose of your life. Like, for example, my father, who's a nice person, and he worked very hard. But he was in medical school. When he was in medical school, he'd study for 12 hours a day. For 12 hours a day, he'd study, even to the point sometimes where he would become sick. He'd actually become sick and like vomit from just being so exhausted from studying and from working. So the Grihamedis are working very, very hard simply for sense gratification, simply to maintain sex life. And so the Vedic scriptures, they make the point that sex life constitutionally means trouble. No matter how it's engaged in, sex life means trouble. Because sex life doesn't just mean sex, it means sex, etc. There's so many things that come with sex life, like for the example of the sparrow. Just to have sex life, they have to go all around, find all different twigs and sticks and things like that, and make a nest. And, we have to build skyscrapers and big apartment buildings, and so we have to get a job, go to college. There's so many things that we have to do. And so this verse, Ato griha kshetra sutapta vittar janasya moho yamaham ameti. So they're working so hard, but still they say, there's a saying, home sweet home. So this is moha. This is illusion. It's complete illusion that these people, they think they're happy, but they're working so hard, practically for nothing. For nothing. And this section of the Bhagavatam illustrates very graphically the plight of the conditioned soul in the material world. The basic principle is that the conditioned soul, like the merchant, he's walking into the forest. He's trying to find something to sell. Because the basic principle of business is you buy low and you sell high. So he's walking into the forest trying to find something to sell. He's going to take it back into the city to sell it for a profit. But we see from this verse and previous verses that he's met with so much trouble. His feet are being pricked by stones and thorns, and he's very hungry, and he's being plundered by where is it? Yeah, he falls unconscious, and he's losing his possessions, and he jumps into a shallow river, and he breaks his bones, and so many things. So many things this merchant is meeting with so much trouble, simply for what? To make a little profit, in the city. And so similarly, the living entity wanting to enjoy this material world, he just walks right in. He walks right into this material world on his own accord, and he's met with so much trouble. So much trouble. And so the Vedic culture, as espoused by the Srimad Bhagavatam, seeks actually to avoid sex life as much as possible. Just like alcohol in our society, alcohol, and also in Vedic culture, alcohol is regulated very much. You have to go to a certain place to buy it. You have to be of a certain age to buy it. You have to, show your ID and things like that. You have to be certain places to drink it. You can't just, drink anywhere. So alcohol is regulated so much because the understanding is that it's not good. It's not good. Alcohol is not good. But bread, for example, you can go anywhere and buy bread, and there's no heavy taxes on bread, and you can eat bread anywhere. You don't have to go to a certain place. You don't have to be of age to buy bread. Yes, this Vedic culture seeks to avoid sex life as much as possible, knowing it to be very troublesome. And that's why 3 of the 4 ashrams of the Varna ashram system do not allow for sex life whatsoever. The Brahmacharya ashram, no sex life. The Vanaprastha ashram, no sex life. The Sannyas ashram, no sex life. Well, yeah, no sex life. No, sorry, not. I was in the Vanaprastha ashram allows for association of men and women, but no sex life. But not the Sannyas ashram, no sex life or female association. And so the only ashram which allows for sex life, which allows some concession for sex life, is the Grihastha ashram. And Grihastha, as opposed to Grihamedis, Grihastha just means Griha is home, sta, one who stays. So to stay in a home, Grihastha. The Grihastha ashram. And so to the extent one is a Grihastha, one does not experience the troubles that come with sex life. Because it's meant to be an ashram. An ashram means you have duties, you have responsibilities. ashram practically means your responsibility. Of course, ashram means where you're staying, but it comes with a set of responsibilities. So the grihastha ashram means accepting sex life as a duty, because that is the duty of the people in the grihastha ashram. And so if one goes into householder life, into the grihastha ashram, for sex enjoyment, he will be met with so much trouble. Guaranteed, 100%. But if one goes in with the idea that this is my duty in service of Krishna, to, to have children, to raise them in Krishna consciousness, then the Grihastha ashram, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, it's a very nice institution, actually, for a Vaishnava. And it's a stable platform by which one can execute devotional service, the Grihastha ashram. And Prabhupada even mentions that a good Grihastha, a Grihastha who's doing his duties nicely, is actually more advanced than a Brahmachari, because he's around, he or she, whoever, they are around the objects of sense gratification, but still they're fixed in their Krishna consciousness. So, but the Brahmacharis and the sannyasis, they don't really have to worry, and the Vanaprasthas, they don't really have to worry so much, because ideally they're not around the objects of sense gratification. Traditionally, Brahmacharis, they live in the ashram of the guru, and sannyasis, they live in the forest. There's no question of sense gratification there. Excuse me. And there's many examples of amazing householders, very advanced Krishna conscious householders. For example, our own Srila Prabhupada was a householder. Of course, he had some issues in his household life, but still, he did his duties, and he's a pure devotee of Krishna. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur was an amazing householder. So many responsibilities. Bhaktivinoda Thakur had a great responsibility. He was a magistrate, which is the highest position that an Indian could get in the British government. And so he would go, every day he'd go to court, do his magistrating. But he was leading a double life, actually. He was Kedarnath Datta, and then at home, when he was alone, he was, in his meditation at Radha, he was Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So practically, he was leading a double life, and you read his songs, and they're so esoteric. Here's somebody who was basically in like the most materialistic position you could possibly be in. He was a household. He had so many children. He was a magistrate. He had so many, governmental responsibilities. People looked up to him. People were, in the government. But these were all, of course, external things. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a completely pure devotee. And he had such a rigorous schedule. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, does anybody know Bhaktivinoda Thakur's schedule by heart? I meant to pull it up. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, okay, here's his schedule. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. rest. That was his rest. He rested from 8 to 10. 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. he would write. And then from 4 a.m. to 4:30, again, he would rest. From 4 a.m. to 7 a.m., he would chant japa. From 7 to 7:30 a.m., he would do his correspondence. From 7:30 to 9:30, he would study Shastra. From 9:30 to 10, he would take bath, take prasadam. And the prasadam he would take a half liter of milk, fruit, and 2 chapatis. This is all he would eat. From 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., he would do his court duties. From 1 p.m. to 2 p.m., he would refresh at home. And from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m., he would do more court duties. From 5 p.m. to 7 p.m., he would translate Shastras from Sanskrit to Bengali. From 7 p.m. to 8 p.m., he would take bath, prasadam, another half liter of milk, and rice, and then 2 chapatis. So basically, he would sleep 3 hours, write for 8 hours, study and chant japa for 4.5 hours, and he would work for 6 hours. So just inconceivable Bhaktivinoda Thakur's schedule. And he was a householder. He wasn't a brahmachari. He wasn't a, he was in the Grihastha ashram. Also amongst the Mahajanas, the 12 Mahajanas, Swayambhuva Manu was a householder. Prahlad was a householder. Manu was a householder. Narada was a brahmachari. Kumaras were brahmacharis. Shiva was a householder. Vyasadeva was a householder. So, and Janaka was a householder. So many amazing Grihastha devotees, and so many of the associates of Lord Chaitanya were also Grihasthas. And so there's one common theme, though, amongst all of them, is that they were extremely devoted to Krishna, and the center of their life was Krishna. So if the center of your life is sex life, you're going to be miserable because it's a temporary pleasure. It's just a gross bodily pleasure. But if the center of your life is Krishna and your practice of devotional service, then no matter what ashram you're in, your life will be successful, your life will be perfect, and you'll be happy. So to the extent that we can do that, center our lives around Krishna, to that extent we'll be happy, to that extent we'll be able to achieve the goal of life. And amongst our acharyas, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, there is no such distinction. Like, for example, like Lord Chaitanya. When he saw Srivas Thakur's wife was pregnant, and he was very happy, and he gave the child an auspicious name. But similarly, Chota Haridas, who was who was not a householder, he saw him. He was looking lustfully at a woman, and as a result, he rejected him. So there's no discrimination between brahmacharis and grihastas and sannyasis. The point is, the ultimate goal of any ashram, of the entire Varnashram institution, is to become Krishna conscious. We have to become Krishna conscious. We have to center our lives around devotional service to Krishna. And we have to do the duties of our ashram. And whatever ashram we have, our duties are to chant the holy name, read and study Shastra and Srila Prabhupada's books, and also to distribute Krishna consciousness as far and wide as possible to every town and village. This is our duty. This is everybody's duty in Kali Yuga. But Prabhupada's also making the point here that while the consideration of ashram is a material one, still there are certain ashrams which, you could say, certain material situations which are more conducive to, or easier to be Krishna conscious in. Like, for example, the Grihastha ashram. Although one can be Krishna conscious in the Grihastha ashram, one has to, just the nature of the Grihastha ashram is that one has to perform some, in one sense it's not material activity, but in another sense it is material activity. One has to perform some kind of material activity. One has to work, one has to maintain a family, work for money, and deal with people. And so all of their time can't be dedicated to preaching, to spreading Krishna consciousness. But for the brahmacharis, for the sannyasis, for the vanaprasthas, they can dedicate all of their time to preaching. So therefore, Prabhupada says in this purport that one should, at one point, exit family life. Family life should be a temporary thing. One goes into it, and one comes out the other side. And when they do this, they should, of course, Prahlad Maharaj is saying in this verse, Tatsada manya suravarya dehinam sadab samudvigna dhyama sadgrahad hitvatam patam grihamanda kupam vanam gato yadharimashrayeta, that one should go to the forest. But better than going to the forest is that one stays in the city and preaches Krishna consciousness to everybody that he meets. Because in sex life, in the Grihastha ashram, there can be a tendency to become complacent. One can become comfortable I have my wife, I have my children, I have my home, and it's a comfortable situation, as it's meant to be. It's meant to be more comfortable than the other ashrams, and we see that people just become complacent. They don't, they don't engage in as much Krishna consciousness as they should. So, therefore, Prabhupada and the entire corpus of the Vedic literatures are advising that one should give up his household life and spread Krishna consciousness as far and as wide as possible, so that people can get out of this griham andhakupam, this dark well of materialistic household life. We should be helping people try to get out of this because they're suffering like anything. And the point here is made that one has to separate from his family, either by time or, maybe there'll be some divorce or something like that. But one has to separate. The separation must happen. And so it's much more glorious for one to separate willingly for the sake of Krishna consciousness rather than to separate forcedly. And Prabhupada says that to separate from family affairs at a certain age and fully depend on Krishna, this makes one's life successful. So that's all I have. Maybe we can have discussion, questions, comments.
Hare Krishna.
I think Balaram Prabhu has something.
So it's quite a different concept that the Srimad Bhagavatam and Srila Prabhupada are presenting. Means a different concept. People aren't. It's difficult sometimes for people to accept. Like I remember, I was telling someone about this concept that, the husband, he leaves.
Yeah.
She was like, "What? He leaves?
Yeah.
What do you mean he leaves? That's cruel." Of course, this is for somebody who wants to be with their husband.
Yeah.
Some people say, "Okay, great, let him leave. I want a divorce," right? But this is for someone who wants to be with their husband, and she thought it was cruel and insensitive and just weird.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And then you see that, maybe within India, there's more of this idea, sannyas leaving. But in other cultures of the world, it's not that we take to Krishna consciousness and immediately all of our cultural condition is just wiped clean. There's still a lot. So that's one thing. And another thing is that saying, okay, leave, okay, vanaprast, because another thing is vanaprast. Okay, you're with your wife, or a person's with their wife, and they're just retiring from working for money, and they're just engaged in more activities of Krishna consciousness. But another difficulty comes is that when someone has kids, their kids have grandkids.
Yeah.
And the grandkids, because of the grandmother and grandfather not working, they're older, they're not working, and then the parents, they're working. So now what happens then? Give the grandkids to the grandmother and grandfather, and then you're in family life again.
Yeah.
So maybe you could just... There's two things. Maybe you could just comment on these ideas.
So, of course, in modern society, living in... Of course, I think the solution would be... See, now, we haven't really established Varnashram, So these little difficulties, these little things, they'll come. But the solution ultimately is to establish Varnashram Dharma. Because... then none of these things, then we won't have to make any concessions with materialistic society. But one thing I could say, so the first thing you mentioned was people think it's cruel and insensitive to leave. Well, we read from the Srimad Bhagavatam and from everything that Prabhupada said that it's more cruel and insensitive to promote that people should try to enjoy materialistic life well into old age. It's actually more cruel and insensitive to make people think that, because you're robbing them of the actual purpose of life, which is to become Krishna conscious. So, I mean, it takes faith. It takes faith to accept, these things which are difficult to accept. And if one can't fully accept it, then, there's also this allowance within the Vanaprastha ashram that, the wife and the husband and wife can stay together.
Seems like that's what mostly is going on in America.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and that might just have to be what goes on. I think Jupiter Prabhu has some.
One thing we have to remember, is real loud, is that the traditional sannyas, and the program that Prabhupada would always write his books on ashram dharma, the family life is completely different. Like even in Prabhupada's time,
Yeah.
you have this extended family. You have a support system. When if the husband takes sannyas or they do vanaprastha, and the wife goes back to live with the elders, one of the elder sons. But there's also like a whole, you've got the cousins and the uncles, and there's a whole thing going on.
Yeah.
Traditionally, so that it's not just why it seems so impossible today, because you have these nuclear families where if the man and woman stay together, that's considered a success. There's so much divorce going on. And then you have the children. The elder son is supposed to take care of the mother who's now the husband took sannyas. Well, that may not be. There may not be. The elder son may be too old or too young, or not willing. Because of all of the distance. As soon as the kid gets out, 18, 19, they want to go to. They're going to school. They work 1,000,000 miles away from. Everything is so atomized in today's society, and so that's one of the reasons why the sannyas is so difficult today to maintain. It's great for preaching, but then what happens? Then they made a rule in the GBC, what the wife has to be provided for.
Yeah.
I remember Kadambakananda Maharaj made a statement once. He never had to worry so much about maintenance when he and wife were working in the temple, and they were, and he took sannyas, and he had to figure out how to start a business so that his wife would have something. He had to worry, when he was taking sannyas, he had to worry more about business and maintenance than when he was just a householder, because he had to figure out how she was going to be maintained. So it's more difficult today with the crazy social system we have.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
Hare Krishna, Amogha, Lila, Dasa.
Hare Krishna.
So you were.
What's your name?
You were Alex. I'm Bhakti Alex. This is Alex.
Oh, Alex Lopez.
Yes, Alex
Okay.
Lopez.
Oh, Jai. Okay. Hare Krishna.
Jai.
Good to hear from you.
Hare Krishna. So you were speaking about Griya Maidis, and so like my understanding of a Griya Maidi is basically like a fruitive worker.
Yeah.
And they're like very dedicated to like family life. But it sounds like they're performing karma yoga, which is like considered pious. It's like the first step on the yoga ladder.
Yeah.
But in the third canto, it like really paints a scary picture about the fate of a Griya Maidi.
Yeah.
So my question is, like, can you explain the difference between a karmi and a Griya Maidi?
Well, I mean, there's different. The thing is, in ISKCON, generally we use the word karmi to mean like a gross materialist, like anybody, any degraded, super degraded person. Karmi we use as kind of like an umbrella term. So, I mean, Griya Maidis. Griya Maidi is basically anyone who's just completely attached to materialistic household life. Whether you do it piously or whether you do it impiously, practically it's the same, There's levels, there's levels of Griya Maidis. For a Griya Maidi who's focused more on, punya karma and going to the heavenly planets, and that you could say that's a more pious, more pious Griya Maidi. Yeah, but still, it's still material. It's still materialistic household life because the goal is sense gratification, and then of course you also have 99.9% of people out there who are just whatever, want to stuff whatever they can get into their senses and call it happiness. And they'll go to any length, for sense gratification, no matter how degraded it is. So there's different levels. There's different levels to Griha Madis, but the underlying principle is being attached to sense gratification rather than being attached to Krishna.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
I got 3 quick questions, if you don't mind. I'll give it to you real fast. Did anything happen to the Brahmacharan and the 80 children that he had? Did anything come of those 80 children?
No. He was having children until he was 80.
Oh, until he was 80.
He had I think he had like 10. He had like 10 children.
Anything come of them or no?
No. He's talking about
Yeah.
Ajamil. Yeah, it doesn't really mention much about it.
And the other comment I had regarding sex being the prominent thing of this society because their passions are lacking and that's the only thing they know. We know that the only hole in our heart can be filled by Krishna or God's love because we are aware of that and that logic. It's not so much sex is their prominent thing. They're looking for intimacy, I find, if you have any comments on it. And because they think sex is the only way to find intimacy on a physical level, they keep seeking that as a way of filling that hole, which they never get filled.
Yeah, that's also a thing that lust is a perverted reflection of our pure love for Krishna. Yeah, that's a good point.
And the third one is regarding the 3 separate ashrams, and the fourth one, a trick I find is rather than seeing for the brahmacharans and the other one, that there's males and females, and then we have to prevent ourselves from having lust for females. If we're able to see everything as human, we get rid of that extra work that we have to put into actually denounce the sexual or lust aspect from the female aspect, rather than just seeing it as human.
Yeah, that's a good point. We should see Dasa and Madarshana. We should see everybody equally, but it's difficult. So therefore, the injunction is there. So Vijay Krishna Prabhu from Portugal.
Yes, Amogha Prabhu. Dandavat Pranams. Prabhu, thank you very much. You're very kind. Prabhu, my question is as follows.
Yes.
If almost 99.9% of the population is unhappy in family life, why is it that the institution of Varnashram Dharma includes family life?
Well, because in this material world, the living entities have material desires, and one may not be able to just outright give up sex life or a desire for companionship. And also, the Grihastha ashram maintains the other 3 ashrams. It's actually a pillar of the Varnashram system, the Grihastha ashram, because Grihasthas, they support the Vanaprasthas, they support the sannyasis, they support the brahmacharis, and they also make the brahmacharis and the future Grihasthas and the future sannyasis and the future, Vanaprasthas. So the Grihastha ashram is extremely important. Of course, if there were no more living entities born in this material world, it probably wouldn't be such a bad thing. But yes, that's there. That it's needed.
So in accordance with your answer, people who go for Grihastha ashram in accordance with the institution of Varnashram Dharma will have no difficulties?
Daiva Varnashram. There's a distinction between Varnashram and Daivi Varnashram. There's still difficulty.
What is the difference?
The difference is that Varnashram, without Krishna, just leads to more pious sense gratification. But the idea is that the goal of Varnashram Dharma should be Krishna consciousness. But even for devotees in the Grihastha ashram within Krishna consciousness, still there's trouble. Because sex life means material enjoyment. Well, I guess the beginning point would be Grihastha ashram is a concession for sex life. Sex life means material enjoyment. And material enjoyment means at the very least, the possibility of forgetting Krishna. So still there's trouble. And 9 times out of 10, it's mostly forgetting Krishna.
Yes, as usual, outstanding answer to my question. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Breathtaking question, Prabhu.
Yes, also.
Just to
Yes.
add, the Grihastha ashram, they are producing the next generation of Krishna conscious
Yeah.
devotees. So long as they maintain Krishna consciousness as the center of their Grihastha ashram.
Jai. Yes, please. Hare Krishna.
So, as you said, nowadays genders are all mixed. Women, men, everyone is trying to be everything. So, can women not take the same path that is recommended for men in the Shastras? Like sannyas, vanprasth?
Well,
Why is it only for men?
well, the idea is that men and women, they have different natures. So the Vedic scriptures enjoin that women should be protected. No matter what ashram they are in, they should be protected. And that's the duty of men, is to protect women. That's not their only duty, but that's a duty of men, is to protect women. So for example, in her childhood, a woman is protected by the father. In her adulthood, she's protected by the husband. And in her old age, she's protected by her children, her not elder, but her grown children. So for women to, for example, if women want to take sannyas or if women want to be renunciates, fine, but they have to be protected. They have to be under someone. They can't just be, wandering around like any old sannyasi. They have to be protected. But most of the time, women don't really desire so much to take to the renounced order. That's just kind of their general nature. Most of the time. There's examples like Ganga Mata Goswamini. She was, a renunciate woman. But yeah, the idea is that yes, they can if they want to, but they should be protected by someone. They should be under somebody. Okay, anything else? Any final? Okay, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Sri Narayana Prabhu ki jai.